Welcome to part 9 of the 2-player pinball machine build. In this video, I'm going to improve the flippers. There's a few problems with their current performance, and these fixes will make them work correctly 100% of the time. One of the problems is the flippers don't always reset. The other issue is when the flipper does reset, it shoots the actuator way too far. These changes will also help improve the machine's longevity and ability to travel. This change will involve the hardware you see here. This is a T-nut, and it will be embedded in the wood. It'll hold a machine screw that will hold a rubber band. The screw will also be used to keep the actuator from spitting out too far. I turned the machine on its side to access the moving parts. I marked the actuators at their most retracted position. This mark will be the guide for placing the T-nut and screw. I carefully placed the T-nut on the actuator and marked its center with a punch. I placed it so the outer edge of the screw would line up with the mark. I used a spade to remove some of the wood, and then a drill bit to remove most of the center. The T-nut has to be recessed in the actuator so it doesn't affect the performance. I hammered it in, and then used a punch to further press it into the wood. The machine screw doesn't wiggle at all, exactly the kind of result I was going for. I continued the process for all the other actuators. Here, you can see how the T-nut is recessed in the block. Once all 4 were completed, it was time to install them. The actuator has to be placed, followed by the machine screw. Disassembling the actuator will simply consist of taking out the machine screw. I moved one of the rubber bands over and gave it a try, but it popped off. This is a simple fix. I just needed a new spot to connect the rubber band to stretch it out a bit. The more stretched out it is, the faster the actuator will retract. The other reason for putting a rubber band directly on the actuator is to prevent it from sticking. The various forces on it were causing pinching and it would get stuck. Now that there's a direct force pulling the actuator back, it will not get stuck anymore. In order to work on the actuators on the other side, I had to remove the first 2, which was a very simple thing to do. Over time, the rubber bands will wear out and need replacing, and hopefully that's the only thing that needs routine maintenance. Once the other actuators were completed, I reinstalled the first 2. Then it was time to give it a test. The flippers work much better now and are very consistent. Since the rubber bumpers aren't on the flippers yet, they aren't performing how they will when the machine is completed. The pinballs will bounce off the flippers and really be able to launch to the opposite side. When I finish the layout and all the structural elements, I'll play a test game with a friend with some of the specialty rubber pieces in place. We'll give the machine a solid test to see if any changes need to be made before painting and adding details. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the next step will be building the ramps and upper platforms that connect both sides of the machine. That's it for now. See ya.